Hey everybody, welcome, welcome. Here is another episode of FAQs. I want to jump right in to barking because barking is often an issue for a lot of owners, a lot of dog humans that make us absolutely crazy. I am one of them for sure. You may even hear barking in the background while I'm doing this, so we shall see. If we're meeting for the first time, my name's Brianne. I am here to teach you all about dog training and enrichment and help you build a better relationship with your pup. So let's talk about it. Why does my dog bark at everything? Currently, I have a dog that is just like that. It's really, really frustrating, right? So you are not alone. I'm going to say that in a lot of videos, right? You are not alone. So don't despair. There is help out there. There are others struggling right along with you. But what I want you to know, and this is, something that you need to know because the barking can't stop unless you understand it a little better, right? So most dogs that bark at everything or bark at a lot of things, right? Whatever their triggers are, they're not being bad. They're not doing it to cause you distress or anger or frustration. They are overwhelmed. They're understimulated, right? They're bored and it's become a habit. So they're not being bad. They're not being malicious. They're not trying to make you really upset, right? They just don't know what else to do sometimes. Sometimes they're afraid, right? Sometimes there are other underlying issues that you need to work them through to help them. So just like we say with kids, right? Try to understand that they are not trying to give you a hard time. They are having a hard time, right? And so we need to find ways that we can help them through that so that then we can have some sanity in our own minds and the barking goes away. I have my notes, so please forgive me when I look down, but I want to make sure that I tell you everything that I have lined up for you. Barking is just a way of communicating with you, right? They're just trying to communicate what's going on, and that's all they've got. That's all they've got to do it with. So first I'm going to start with some talking points about why barking happens. Then I'm going to go into what not to do, right? And then I'm going to go into what to do. So please stick around because I am going to have points for you about how to help some of it, right? I could go on for hours about every barking type and situation. So this is going to be a very broad subject, right? But it works in a lot of cases, whether it's alert barking, fear barking, anxiety barking, boredom barking, all of the different types of barking, right? And I think I'm going to do a little series on barking because otherwise this will be hours long. So I'm going to break it up into little ones so that we can talk about the different types, maybe how to tell the different types, because there are ways that you can figure out what kind of barking is happening. So we'll talk about that in a different live. Why do they do it? Barking, one, it's all they've got. I said that earlier. But it also helps them to release tension and pressure, and helps them to self-soothe. And I know that sounds kind of weird because it's like they're amping themselves up when they do it, right? But it is a way for them to release some of that tension and then they can calm down afterwards. So a lot of times they'll bark when things are unpredictable, again, right? They're scared, they're anxious, they're bored, they don't know what else to do, so why not bark? Because it's fun and it gets me attention, right? They're smart, they're really smart. And sometimes they're overstimulated and they can't settle down, right? There are many reasons that dogs bark, but those are some that I want to talk about today, and there are a lot of the most common ones as well. So let's see. Sorry, I'm just going over my notes. Okay, so let's talk about mental boredom, right? This is a top reason that they bark. So you can exercise and walk and run and play fetch and play frisbee and do all of the physical activities, but then your dog still barks, right? Like, where is this energy coming from? It's driving me crazy. I've walked you all day. We've played constantly. Like, what is happening, right? But it's probably because they are understimulated mentally. And that's why I focus on enrichment. It's really become a main focus of mine recently because it is so important to stimulate your dog mentally. and get their brain working and get their brain to be tired, because mental exhaustion is just, if not more, exhausting than physical activity. And this is true for humans too, right? If you've had a long day where a whole bunch of crappy things happened at work, you had to make all these horrible phone calls and stressful meetings and stressful conversations, you go home, you're exhausted, right? Not because you ran a marathon, but because you had all this mental drainage happening, right? So that's a realistic example right there. So we want to give them more mental stimulation, right? Sniffing is everything. You've probably heard me say that before. Problem solving, sniffing, using their brains, thinking about how to problem solve something. And if they don't have enough of that, then their brains look for any outlet, right? And a lot of times it's distraction or it's barking. Those are like usually one of the two ways it's going to go. Zoomies can be another one, which is a more toned down variety of that. But sometimes zoomies, even though they're super fun, sometimes they can indicate that your dog is, looking for another outlet to get mental energy out, or physical, energy out. Sometimes they bark because they're overstimulated. Too many sights, too many sounds. They've been around too many of their triggers, and they don't know, or their brains can't process it all fast enough for them to stay calm, right? So triggers, sensory triggers are another big reason. And then the third big reason that I want to talk about is habit. They do it because they're bored. They do it because they're reactive. They do it because they're alerting and then the thing goes away. So then they think it works, right? It's all self-reinforcing. It makes them feel in control when that happens, right? When the mailman comes to your door, they bark, 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 bark. And then the mailman goes away. And in their brains, they did that. They had the mailman go away because they barked at him. So over time, it becomes a habit, and then it just becomes automatic. Now they're just going to bark at anybody passing by. Now they're going to bark at the dog who's being walked down the street, right? They're just going to bark because that's what they do, and it becomes a habit. And that's why I talk a lot about training in general, how we want to manage the environment so that they cannot practice the bad behaviors, because when they do get a chance to practice those bad behaviors all the time, they become habit. They just become automatic, and they're really hard to get rid of once they are habit. Okay, so that's some of the why. Now I want to go into what not to do. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but these are tips that I would give no one to fix barking. Number one, don't yell. Oh my God, I yell. You guys, I've been training animals for a long time. I yell at my dog sometimes because he drives me nuts. So what do you do when you yell? You probably feel guilty later. Maybe you feel guilty right away. Give yourself grace. You are so human, and it's okay, right? Apologize to your dog. Let him know you love him. Try to give yourself grace and try to do better next time. Number one, don't yell. Yelling, just like yelling at your kids, just like yelling at another human being, it adds energy, right? And what you're looking for is calming down the situation, right? So if you yell at anybody, dogs or not, it's just going to raise the energy level, which is the exact opposite of what you're trying to do, right? Try not to yell. Number one, saying no. Don't say no. I'm a positive reinforcement trainer, so I'm often going to tell you that means that animals never hear the word no. And that doesn't mean that they get away with everything, right? What it means is that if you're only saying no, don't do that, right? Again, just like to kids, animal training and child psychology go hand in hand, believe it or not. When you just say no, you're not teaching them what to do instead, right? So if you do say no, because it's part of our human language and we say it a lot, right? Say, no, don't do that. Here, do this instead, right? We're going to give them a tool right away. If you do catch yourself saying no, then right away redirect it to giving them a tool for something that they can do. This is what I want you to do instead. Again, more walks isn't going to fix it, right? So don't take your dog on a walk if they're barking all the time. Really don't take them on a walk if they're barking at you because they want a walk. unless you want to train them to train you, right? Because that's what they're doing. They're training you to take them on a walk when they bark at you, when they want to walk. So just know that mental stimulation is not going to be fixed by physical stimulation, if that makes sense. Ignoring. Again, with positive reinforcement training, one of the things that we do a lot is we try to ignore the behavior that we don't want to see, and we try to reward the behavior that we want to see again, right? And that is a tip that I give a lot of people. Ignore it. Ignore it and then praise when they're quiet. But honestly, while it is good advice and it does work in some cases, it doesn't always, right? So training really is the study of one in one moment. It's all about knowing the animal. It's all about knowing your dog, right? So if ignoring is going to work because they hate to be ignored, and you're really good at timing when you are going to tell them that they're good and when they're quiet, then it might work, right? But if your timing is not very good, or if your timing is off, or if the dog won't stop barking, right, no matter what, and your patience runs thin before you can get through this exercise, right? You try to ignore, you try to ignore, you try to ignore until on your insides you're about to boil over, right? And then you explode. No good, right? It's not going to do any good, because now you're yelling, now you're upset, now you're adding energy to the situation, which is exactly what you don't want to do. So ignoring it works sometimes, but not always. So I just want to put that out there. Basically, you cannot punish a nervous system into being calm. Punishment, in my opinion, doesn't really solve a whole lot of anything when you're trying to build a relationship with your dog, and when you're trying to get your dog to want to behave for you, right? Want to work for you, want to live in harmony with you. I try to, stray away from punishment and not really use aversive methods if I can help it. Because it's not going to calm a dog down. It's going to create more anxiety and stress inside them because they really don't like what's happening, right? And it might cause fear, intimidation, and all the things that don't really build your relationship with an animal. Okay, so that's what not to do. So now I want to spend quite a bit of time on what to do, things that you can use today that actually work. So one is knowing your environment, knowing when your dog is most triggered, right? You might need to do a little bit of trial and error where you are watching your dog. When are they barking the most? Why do you think it's happening, right? Watch some body language, watch things go by in your window with your dog and see what happens. If they bark more on leash when they're outside walking, just try to understand more about what is happening when your dog is barking the most. And then you can focus on managing that environment to try to calm the barking down. And when when the peak barking times are, right? If you live near a school and when school is either starting or about to start, or when it's just getting out, there's a lot of stuff moving back and forth outside your house, right? Maybe that's a peak barking time for your dog. Maybe it's after work when everybody's out walking their dogs after work, for your own situation. Try to pay attention to when the peak barking times are. And then try to add mental work for your dog before those peak times, right? This is managing your environment. So maybe you give them a treat puzzle. Maybe you have them do a sniffing game in your house where you hide treats around the house. Maybe you give them a food puzzle or a topple, some sort of treat that, dispenses treats as they push it around. Scatter feeding, right? Maybe it's dinner time and you throw the bowl up and it goes all over the kitchen and they have to go find every piece. Some sort of mental work, right? And I do have a free guide on enrichment that has even more ideas. If you want that, just comment below or send me a message and I can get that to you as well. But add some sort of mental work. Hard, easy, doesn't matter. Add some sort of mental work before those peak times. Because if your dog is tired, right, mentally tired, then they're not going to spend as much brain energy looking out the window for something to bark at, right? You want to try to Also control your environment so that they don't have the opportunity to bark at their triggers. So if that means closing your blinds because you know that's a trigger for them to bark out the window, if you maybe add background noise, if you know that there's going to be a lot of noise outside that usually triggers your dog at a certain time of day, turn the TV up, turn some music on, start a white noise machine, whatever works for you. Create some background noise so that it hopefully blocks out a lot of what's happening outside. If you close the blinds but your dog can still get up there, maybe add some sort of gate around the window, push the couch away from the window, whatever your setup is that works to get your dog away from the window. And then reward the calm, right? If your dog ever makes a choice to not go up and bark at something, oh my gosh, throw a party. Throw a freaking party, right? Get so excited, praise, high tone, friendly tone, treats, party time, right? Dogs are always down to party, even when they don't know why. They just know that you're happy, right? So point out those moments that they decide they make really good decisions about barking and to not bark at something that maybe they would have. If they are calm and maybe laying down after their mental enrichment, you can pet them, keep your party a little more low key, right? Because you want to reward the calm without pepping them right back up. So good boy, good girl, nice, long, slow strokes along the body. Fast is gonna ramp them up a little bit. So nice, long, slow strokes on their head to their back or whatever they like, right? Chin scratches, chest scratches, belly rubs, ear rubs, whatever your dog loves, nice and slow. And try to catch those moments. Try to catch them before they start barking and reward them for being quiet. I am always a proponent of teaching for the moment, training for the moment instead of in the moment. Because if you wait until your doorbell rings to try to train your dog to not bark at the door, it's not going to go well, right? If you wait for that dog across the street to walk by and your dog is barking at it, if you wait for that moment to train, they're going to ignore you. They're not ready. They're not ready for those moments, right? So in the beginning, it's all about managing your environment so that they can't practice and slowing down and rewarding them. Anytime you see them being calm, reward the calm. The more you reward the calm, they're going to learn that that's what you want from them, right? That's you pointing out what I want. Earlier I said, don't just tell them no, tell them what you want instead, right? So if you happen to not catch it, right? Because it's going to happen, right? You're not always going to be able to catch them before the barking starts. So your doorbell rings, they're flying off the handle. You decide you don't want to answer the door because it's a stranger with a clipboard, and you wait for the person to go away. And while you're working on that, you ask your dog to come with you, right? Dog can't come. Dog is barking at the window still. This is kind of a moment where the dog still gets reinforced for the barking because the person will eventually go away, right? But then as soon as that dog either looks back at you or stops barking for a second and you feel like you can reel him back in, right? That's when I want you to say, hey, come here. Come, right? Come. Sit. Yes, you get them under control. Praise. You get them to lie down and settle down after the big moment. Praise. Treats if they help. That's, kind of what you do if you can't catch it before it happens, right? Dog walks by outside, bark. As soon as you feel that they're starting to calm down and starting to be able to let go of it and come back to you, grab them, right? But if you're trying to grab them, and when I say grab them, I just mean grab their attention, right? Trying to get them back under control. If you try to do that when they're in the midst of their big trigger that they're barking at, they're not going to hear you. They are too far gone. And that's when a lot of times we get angry. So we'll go grab the collar, we'll go yell, we will tell them to stop it right now. Our stern, parent voices come out. And that does nothing to help, unfortunately. But we're human. We're human and we're going to do it sometimes. So again, give yourself grace when it happens. Try to do better the next time. So when, again, you don't want to train in the moment. So all the moments that you can when there's nothing happening outside or there's nothing happening with their trigger, that's when you reward them for being calm. If you're on a walk and there's no dogs around and you're having a very peaceful walk and they normally bark at dogs as soon as they see them, but there's no dogs around right now, oh my gosh, what a good girl, good girl, good girl. For all the calm moments, what a good dog, right? Here's some treats. So again, I can talk about barking for a very long time, so I'm going to do a series on barking, and we'll talk about specific types of barking in some of these videos and help you to identify what's happening and give you even more tips on what to do for specific barking types. So that's all coming in upcoming episodes. Just know that barking is something that isn't going to disappear overnight. Typically, it has become a habit, unfortunately. So we should not expect it to disappear overnight. Some dogs are going to learn quicker than others, right? Some dogs are going to practice the bad behavior more often, so it's going to be harder to get them out of it. Sometimes you're going to have to manage your environment in different ways. You try something, that didn't work. You try something else, that didn't work. You find something that works for you to try to decrease their ability to be able to practice the behavior, and you'll find what works for you. So do what you can to reduce the frequency of the behavior happening. Do what you can to reduce the intensity, right, that they get in. And just know that every small change you make is worth it. It's helping. And because this takes so long, you may not see those changes, those small improvements along the way. And that's what makes this hard too. And that's what makes you want to give up. But try to see the progress. Try to celebrate every little win, because progress is happening in there. And before you know it, you will have a dog that does not bark anywhere near as often as he used to. The other thing that I want to mention right before I go is that we cannot take the barking out of the dog, right? Unless you literally go get a surgery that takes out their vocal cords or bark box or whatever is in there that allows them to bark, which I honestly think is not humane. That's my personal opinion. But unless you do something like that, right, you cannot take the bark out of a dog. And honestly, I don't want to take the bark out of a dog because barks give us warnings when it's appropriate, when they're feeling a certain kind of way about another dog or another human, when they're not feeling safe. Growls tell us information about their being uncomfortable and we should back off. Barking alerts me when there might be danger present, right? And I want them to bark when there's a stranger at the door. That's my personal opinion, right? Some people share it, some people don't, but that's my take on it. I don't want to take the bark out of the dog, but I do want the dog to be able to listen to me when I ask him to please stop. So that's where I'm at with barking. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you have specific questions about barking that you would like to see answered in these next few videos about barking. I'm happy to talk about your specific situation and answer questions that you have about your dog. So please drop them below. If you want that enrichment guide, let me know. Either comment here or send me a message. And I will see you next time for another episode of FAQs, and it will be about more barking. All right, guys, have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon.